Welcome to Her Lights, your home for women's sports coverage. I'm your host, Erin Foley, a stand-up comic, TV writer, and most important, an obsessed sports fan. I break down the best games, highlight the best stories, and interview the best from the world of women's sports. So put on your jerseys, stretch out your hammies, and let's do this. Hello, Herlighters. It's Erin Foley back in the booth talking women's sports. Currently at sea. That's probably something you didn't plan on hearing. I'm doing shows all week on a cruise ship with Atlantis Events. It's an LGBTQ travel company. Essentially, it's about 4,000 gay men and myself, so I will have some stories. Honestly, it's like one of my favorite gigs I do. It's just nonstop, I don't know, slinging jokes and dancing. It's so much fun. I do have a goal, though. The goal for this cruise ship is to either find women sports fans while I'm aboard or convert them. Either way, I will be spreading the good word. Okay, people, my guest this week is Jacki Gemelos, a former WNBA player, assistant coach, and current VP of talent at Disrupt the Game, which is a sports agency started by Allison Gaylor that reps some like amazing athletes like Lisa Leslie, Crystal Dunn, Chiney Ogwumike, Kelsey Mitchell. I mean, just to name a few. And Jacki's story is really pretty incredible. She was born and raised in Northern California, phenomenal basketball player in high school, like McDonald's All-American, recruited by all the top colleges. So she winds up going to USC and then played overseas in a couple seasons in the WNBA. But here's the kicker. In the 10 years that she played, she tore her ACL 5 times. I mean, it was setback after setback after setback. And yet she still kept going. She still figured out a way to play. And we're going to talk about all of that. You know, she's got some incredible stories and amazing insights. But, you know, it's essentially like her experience on the court and overcoming all her injuries off the court has become like this full circle moment. It has become her special sauce in her job now as a sports agent, which is helping to guide young female athletes, you know, throughout their career. And one last thing, we recorded this episode about 2 weeks ago at the height of the WNBA free agency. Jacki's phone was literally like blowing up during our conversation. We even had to cut it a little short because her clients were literally on the move, going from team to team. In fact, the Alyssa Thomas trade happened about 2 minutes before we jumped, you know, on air. And I was like, oh my God, you know, we have to talk about all of this. But there was only so many things like she could say. And I wound up having to edit out, honestly, probably the first 10 minutes of our conversation because we were like, oh my God, Alyssa Thomas, that's going to be so much fun to see her play with BG and Natasha Cloud. And then, you know, 2 days later, after our conversation, they were traded. So our sports talk didn't even make sense because there were so many players on the move. Anyway, the fact that she carved out time to talk to me in like the flurry of free agency was just super cool. Last note, and this is kind of hilarious. If you're watching the podcast on YouTube, you'll notice that I'm constantly blinking throughout the episode. It's because I realized about 10 or 15 minutes into our conversation that I had put my left contact in my right eye and my right contact in my left eye. Did I power through like a professional? You goddamn right I did. I'm going to blame it on lack of sleep due to the excitement of free agency and also the news coming out of our current administration. And I use the word administration loosely. Okay, Herlighters, love you all. Let's do this. We're jumping right in. All right, let's get into your amazing career. Holy crap. This is like one of the joys of doing this podcast is, well, first of all, just getting to talk sports with like incredible people in the women's sports community. It's such a joy, but also doing a nerdy deep dive. And a couple things just popped out about your career that we have to get into. One, you went to USC and I'm just going to tell you, I'm a UCLA fan. I just
Oh no, what are
adopted.
we
I
doing
know,
here?
but
No, I'm just kidding.
I do. If UCLA is not involved, USC, all that. It's California above, you know.
Totally.
Um, but how deep is like? Because I have some bitter East Coast rivalries. But how deep is that? You when you played for USC, that is it an intense? Is that like the games you put on your calendar and you're like, oh, they're going down?
Absolutely. if I had to compare those rivalries to other rivalries that I've had in my life, like especially overseas, I would say the overseas rivalries are way more intense. But for being, you know, American and in college, like, yes, that's one of the biggest rivalries. USC has this thing called the dual meet. I'm pretty sure they still have it, but it's every sport that plays UCLA, they tally like how many wins versus losses. And I think all 6 years that I was there, we won the dual meet, which is like a really cool stat in my opinion. Um,
Yeah.
I'm not saying women's basketball won the game every time. Definitely not saying that, but yeah, I mean it's definitely like one of those calendar games where you're like, okay, tuned in, like this is going to be a dogfight.
Yeah, that's so fun. I love that. Growing up, I grew up on the East Coast. It was like a lot of Connecticut, New York, and stuff. And so UConn, I just grew up like a UConn fan because my family was UConn fans. So I have my favorite teams out here, but it's not like that embedded, from birth rivalry. But I was like, well, this year in particular, it feels like wild. I'm going to the UCLA USC game. But
Fun. I wish I
yeah,
was going. I'm not, but
you
I wish
gotta, you gotta come down. You gotta
I
just
know.
get on a
I'll be
plane.
at the USC Ohio State game, which is like the game right before, I think. But
Okay.
yeah,
If I'm in
I'm
town, I
bummed
gotta
out.
get tickets to that. I'm writing this down.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I just decided, okay, well, I'm not gonna go to both. I'll go to, well, that's probably a lie. I probably would have going to both. But initially I was like, I'm gonna get the home court like UCLA, so I'm not in enemy territory. But I'm dying to see the USC team anyway, because they're so fun.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so also another thing that stood out, and we don't have to do a deep dive on this because obviously it sounds so um but it sounds so painful, but also so incredible that you had 5 ACL tears in your career. Like you come out of high school, like the most coveted player, you had ACL tears in high school, and then you go to USC. And then I thought, well, that also kind of puts you in superhero status because you wound up kept playing, and you kept playing after all of that. Like your pain threshold must be incredible.
I don't know if it's pain threshold or if it's like stubbornness or what. I don't know. I look back on it and I'm like, wow, like I really put myself through that. That was intense. Um, But yeah, going back to high school, I tore my ACL for the first time the last game of my senior year in high school, which was pretty close to the McDonald's All-American game. So I had to sit out of that game, but they still had me attend, and I was begging and trying to get them to let me do the three-point contest, which they also told me no because they didn't want it to be like a liability or something. If I got hurt like while doing it, then like it would be on them. But I was there, didn't participate in the games, and then shortly after that, I was told that I was going to have to redshirt my freshman year at USC, which really bummed me out because I thought that there was maybe a chance that I wouldn't have to do that and I could try and play that first year. But I think USC just wanted to take like very much a caution like path forward, and so I redshirted that first year, and then 4 consecutive years after that, I kept re-tearing my ACL. So I didn't play my first game at USC until my senior year,
Wow.
which was February 6th, 2010, which was the year I should have graduated. That was my first game. I played Cal Berkeley, which is close to my hometown. So that was a really cool like homecoming welcome back game. Finished out that season, which was only like 2 months, and then played that full fifth year or that full like fifth year injury free, which was amazing. And then my fifth year, sixth year summer, I got called to play in the World University Games team, made that roster, won a gold medal with USA. So I felt like I was kind of back on that elite stage again. Feeling really good. Came in my sixth year, like the best shape that I had been, and really just like super focused and had, goals to be in a first round draft pick that year and just have a really good year. Started off the season great, and then December 19th, 2011, I tore my ACL for the fifth time against Texas A&M. So stopped playing, really questioned if I was going to continue playing or not. And then all of a sudden, the WNBA draft rolls around and Minnesota selected me in the third round. So I was like, oh, okay, now that gives me something to work towards again. So I'm not throwing in the towel yet. So they retained my rights for that first summer because I was still going to be injured. So I started getting myself back together, and then I went and played overseas in Athens, Greece, to kind of prep me for that training camp the following summer in 2013 with the Minnesota Lynx. I'll stop
I mean,
there.
no, I have 8,000 follow-up questions. I know it's well, first of all, was it the same knee?
It was
Or
three on my left, two on my right.
to me, it's just so mind-blowing. I mean, it just speaks to first of all, how strong you are and your willpower. Like, I would want to be on your team. I would not want to face you if you're like, I just had five ACL surgeries. You are going down.
Yeah.
Do you have that? You feel like you always had that mentality, or like after you come back from all these surgeries, like there's nothing in life that seems like you can't conquer? I mean, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I feel like I dealt with major adversity in my younger years with just like, mental adversity, but also physical adversity. But I think the hardest part was the mental piece of it. I think physically you learn to adapt and you kind of like change your game accordingly. I physically would never be the same player that I was prior to injury, but I still think I figured out ways to be great. But I think the hardest part is the mental piece of it. Just like having to accept that there's certain things that I couldn't do anymore and having to accept that maybe I wasn't the best player to step on the floor every single night. And just like, worried about getting injured again. Just like never really having a clear conscience going into games or practices because always just afraid of potentially getting hurt. Maybe like, oh, I'm not going to make that move or go there in that direction because, something could happen. So I think, and at the time, like having resources to talk to people, sports psychologists and like therapists and stuff like that, it wasn't around as much as it is now. And I
Yeah.
think looking back on it, I wish that I had more of that because I think that would have helped me a lot. Um, but nonetheless, like I had an amazing support system, family, friends, just people that I was surrounded with that like if I didn't have these people, I don't know where I would have been.
To me, overcoming all of that and then still playing overseas, like it just, my jaw just hit the floor. I also was just like, God, like this morning, I was like, I don't want to go to the gym. I was like, I'll take a walk. And I was like, oh my God. And then I read five ACLs. I was like, after this podcast, go take a
Hey,
run. You
I
know what I
that's
mean?
awesome. That's like those are really cool stories. And honestly, like when I hear things like that, even though this was more of like a funny situation, but if I'm able to like touch a player that's been injured or has had the ACL injury, or I'm able to extend like a helping hand in any way, that to me, it's bigger than basketball, And I think that I have been fortunate and been put in situations where I've been kind of like a guiding light through that injury with certain players. So that to me is like, okay, maybe that's why this all happened, so that I could be that example and kind of pave the way for other athletes that have this injury.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I was like, at some point, you must have just be getting calls from every single person that's torn
For
their
a while
ACL.
there, yeah, I was.
ACL hotline, Jackie speaking.
Seriously, I'm like ACL gang. I think I had a clothing line that I was like doing for fun when I was playing overseas, and I had a shirt that was like hashtag ACL gang.
It's
Because like, yeah, lots of people. I mean, people that have
yeah.
been through that injury, it's definitely a different mindset, and yeah, it's not fun.
No, it is not. But the fact that you kept going and now you can use that and like help others, I mean, that's really, all you can do, but most people can't even, it's I'm not judging they go inward or they give up or what, whatever. It's everybody has a different
Yeah.
path, but the fact that you're channeling all of this is so awesome. Let's
Yeah.
talk about your play overseas. I wrote down the phrase dual national, which sounds like a
Love that.
spy.
It actually does. You're right.
And I was like, is Jackie a spy?
Who knows? Maybe you'll find out on this podcast.
Listeners, it will be revealed by the end of the podcast. No, obviously you played overseas. You are Greek, and you played for the Greece national team. I was like, well, that seems like a really fun thing to dig into.
Yeah, for sure. So my dad is from Greece. My yaya and papu, grandma and grandpa are also from Greece. My dad was the first American to play in Athens as a Greek American. And funny story, my first team was in Athens, Panathinaikos, which is one of the bigger clubs there. And the first team that we played was my dad's old club. So the first ever team I played overseas professionally was my dad's club, which is really cool. Um,
Wow.
so yeah, I obtained my Greek citizenship right out of college. Paperwork and all of that to get the passport. It was a nightmare, but we figured it out. Um, so yeah, I was able to play in Europe as a European player, so I didn't count as an American. And most of the time, each team there is allowed two Americans, but because I had a European passport, I didn't count towards an American. So even though I was an American-born player, we were still able to have two extra Americans, which was really cool and made me like a little bit unique and special in that way. And then when I played in Greece, the country of Greece, I was considered a Greek player. So we could have two Americans plus another European because I was considered the Greek player on the roster. So that made my overseas experience super, super special. And definitely, a little bit more lucrative too, just in terms of like pay and all of that. So yeah, I mean, I had the best time overseas. I loved playing overseas. I think it definitely helped shape me on and off the court.
I just think that's super interesting too, because I didn't realize there was so many rules of like X. How does that break down? Like for these international teams, you can only have two
Yes.
Americans.
So in most countries, in the country's league, so let's just use Greece as an example, they're allowed two Americans and then one European. But if you're playing in EuroLeague or Eurobasket, you can have more Europeans and you can have another American on rotation. So like they can rotate the Americans as needed. And then I think in EuroLeague, you're able to have more Europeans. I don't know the exact number anymore, um yeah, but within the country that you're playing for within that country's league, it's typically just two Americans.
That's interesting. So how would you say, well, two-part question. How would you say the level of play was compared to the WNBA when you were playing over there? And then fast forward, same question now.
Yeah. So I think I'll use I'll use Italy as an example because I played there for 5 years. The Italian league was strong, but anytime you're in a Euro league or Euro basket, Euro Cup, like that is where it gets really competitive because every night you're playing against another WNBA player, if not two, if not three, and then you're also playing against the top European players. So if you're in EuroLeague, it's kind of like the WNBA level. Like every night you're playing just stacked teams with incredible rosters. Euro Cup, not as high of a level, but also still competitive. You'll at least see one WNBA player on each team. And then within your league, that's when it's like, if you're just playing Italian league, that is when it's like not as competitive, but still really good because the local players are exceptional and there's a lot of talent there that people here wouldn't even know about. Um, so to compare it to the WNBA, obviously the WNBA is the top league, women's basketball league in the world, and the most competitive, but like there are some Euro League teams that could definitely give these WNBA teams a run for their money.
Yeah, I've heard like nothing but good things. I just wanted to kind of get your opinion. And how was it like just as a human living over obviously Greek, you have in Greece, you have like, did you have family in Greece that you could
Yeah, so
stay with or see or
yeah. I was very fortunate. I did have family, and then I also had someone who became family to me while I was in Greece. It was the owner of the building that I lived in. She lived on the upper level and I lived right below her, and she's become family. She's actually coming to my wedding that's in a few months upcoming in April. But when I say like, family that has become family, like
yeah.
I pretty much in every country that I've been in, I've always immersed myself into the culture and really just, tried to learn the language, came out of my comfort zone with eating and making sure that I was eating, the ways that they eat and just just in every way possible, I was always trying to immerse myself. I was even taking like Italian lessons with like a teacher at one point. I started taking guitar there, which isn't like a cultural thing, but like,
Yeah,
you just have
cool.
more time there. So I was like, let me just like do some fun stuff that I'm probably never going to get an opportunity to do again. Um, so I loved living there. Italy and Greece were my two favorite countries. I played in Spain, I played in Turkey as well. Great things about all of the countries, but I think like the two have my heart. And yeah, I mean best times of my life for sure.
Well, I feel like you were just universally owed some best times of your life after five
Appreciate that.
ACLs.
I guess, yeah, I would agree.
I mean, just like, come on, cut me some slack here.
That's true.
Um,
Maybe that was my reward for all of
I
it.
mean, what did like, we have the Unrivaled League and the Athletes Unlimited and like their main goal obviously is to give people a great opportunity to play basketball in the
Yeah,
off season of WNBA. But one of, the main goals is to keep players here so they don't have to travel overseas and make some money and so like on paper it all sounds good, but I have heard from a whole bunch of people that including yourself, like what an amazing experience that is to play overseas, just to grow, to learn a new language, to play the guitar in Italy,
yeah.
versus, 3-on-3 in Miami, which is cool. But
Right,
like, I'd love to get your thoughts on like, and then we'll talk about you being an agent. So you're directing some of, your
for
your
sure.
athletes, but what are your thoughts on all of that?
I mean, I think I have such a biased perspective and probably an unpopular opinion of like, yeah, Unrivaled and Athletes Unlimited are absolutely amazing. And I think as those leagues continue to grow, there's going to be more of a place for players. Unrivaled is obviously set to be like the elite group of WNBA players. So not every WNBA player is going to have the opportunity to play there. Athletes Unlimited is kind of in a different category. Still some good players, but like the level is considered maybe a bit lower. Um, I love playing overseas. I think that it has brought so many amazing opportunities to my life. Um, just like having the experience of living in a different country, like there's nothing like it. And it truly shapes you, like not only as a player, but as a human being. And then just like from an on-court perspective, like the game is very different there. It's really played a lot with your head. Everyone is very smart there. Not saying that everyone here isn't smart, but it's
Bunch
it's a
of dum-dums walking around
yeah.
America.
No, no, no. It's just such
Just
a it's such a
kidding.
mental game there, and the way they teach basketball is very different and thoughtful and thorough. And they start at a very young age. Like these players are a part of their clubs from when they're super little, and they can start playing professionally when they're super young and play against players that are way older than them, whereas here in America, it's very different. Um, so, and then you take the skills that you learn overseas, like everything that you learn how to play the game, playing with different players, you take that skill set and you tie it in with, the skills that you learn in the WNBA and you immerse those two together and you just become the best player that you could possibly be. there's a lot of examples of players that have had tremendous careers overseas that also play in the WNBA that I'm sure have a similar opinion as me. So I wouldn't take my experience, I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I would always advise players to play overseas, including my clients. Obviously, if they have an amazing opportunity to play unrivaled and make a ton of money, great. But there's still some markets out here and there's still players that I think that could really benefit from the experience of playing overseas. And China is also another market that's super lucrative for the players. Yes, you're in China, but you're making bank in China, and then there's some countries that pay really, really well, but like it just, what do you want? What do you
Yeah.
want from the experience? And are you okay with being away from your family and missing, super special events and whatnot? So it just depends on what you want.
Yeah, I love that perspective because, you always think about, okay, it's basketball, it's basketball, it's basketball, and there's this pressure now, of course, now and forever, of just like getting the money because women's sports is so up and down, and who
Right.
knows if this league's going to make it, and I'm not comparing to that the guys have it so much easier but they do.
Yeah,
But there is something to be said about having a life experience, and just
100%.
maturing you and some of the times when I've been traveling and performing, stuff happens that you can't you're like, all right, well, now I have a whole new level of confidence in myself because I can
Yeah,
navigate trying to get back to a cruise ship and I missed the
seriously.
time and you know what I mean? All these ridiculous stories. But then you go,
Yeah.
well, if I can get out of that,
Yeah.
so I think that's just huge, and also just from a human being, like you're going to be a better basketball player, but you're going to be, I don't know, a more interesting, evolved human.
Oh, absolutely. Like just like off court stuff. Like I learned how to drive stick shift there, and like I know that's very minimal, but it's really cool to say that
Yeah.
here I drive the stick shift. Being able to get around, learning how to shop in supermarkets there, learning languages, like understanding how to travel anywhere. I can figure it out literally anywhere. And just like learning how they live as people and like within their cultures, just like, yeah, it's so beautiful. And I was fortunate to play in really beautiful places where I wanted to learn those things. So it's like, I hope the Americans that are going overseas are taking full advantage. I know I did. And if you're just sitting in your room all day and just playing and just trying to get by, like then you probably shouldn't be overseas because you're just missing out on a different part of the world and like culture and just history and yeah. Anyways, that's
Yeah,
enough
same page. Then go to Nashville, right? Like then go to
for sure.
Nashville with Athletes Unlimited or
You know,
Miami, you know what I mean?
that's
Or
that's the spot for you.
yeah, or 8 miles outside of the Miami airport, whatever the arena is located. I'm going on Friday, which I'm super excited. I'm gonna check
Fun.
out. Yeah, I've got a show in Fort Lauderdale on Saturday. So I was like, working backwards. Every time
Absolutely.
I book a stand-up gig, I go, what sports can I see? So I'm like,
Yeah.
sweet, I'll do Unrivaled on
We have
Friday and then
we have one of our clients that's playing in Unrivaled. Oh no, sorry, not Unrivaled. Athletes Unlimited. I apologize. Never mind.
you just got me really excited, but that's okay. I'll go to Nashville. Wait, who's your client that's in Athletes Unlimited?
Elizabeth Williams is playing in Athletes Unlimited.
This
Yeah, Athletes
guy,
Unlimited. Yeah. Who, yeah, she's amazing
she's
and
great.
totally.
Well, Liberty fan since birth. I went back because I was like, okay, so you were assistant coaching in 2021. So I
Correct.
went back and I was like, okay, coach roster. The roster flip for the Liberty was insane for like, I don't know, for a very long
I know.
time.
Trust me.
Coaching
I know.
GM. I mean, you were in the middle of it all, but
Yeah.
just if we can just back up, you're playing in 2020 and then, I find these moments of just, okay, I'm going to pivot, I'm going to do this. So interesting. Like, how did you get from playing, just to the idea of like, okay, maybe I'll coach and then Liberty?
Yeah. So I didn't want to coach at all. I had no aspirations of coaching, training, anything like that. I wanted to be removed from basketball in that way. So none of that interests me at all. And then when I was approached by Walt Hopkins, who was the head coach at the time, I had mentioned on my Instagram that I was going to step away from playing and, so excited for this next opportunity. I don't know what's next, but here I am and kind of just like I needed to admit to like social media that I was stepping away and not playing anymore because that really solidified it for me. And then Walt Hopkins had DM'd me to that post and just said, "Hey, what are you doing this summer? I'm, looking for an assistant coach. I think you'd be great. We'll love to hop on a phone call with you." And I think what got me really excited was because I didn't know what I was going to do. And obviously, that's a very scary feeling. And it was a WNBA role, which is not something that I even entertained in my head prior that that would even be an option. And it was New York, like it was the Liberty. So I was like, let me take the phone call. Let me talk to Walt. Let me see. And I had met him that prior summer in the bubble and had really great conversations with him. Really liked him as a human, thought he did a really good job in the bubble that year as a first time head coach. So we hit it off. We just had really good conversations. I then talked to the GM, Jonathan Kolb, had a great conversation with Jonathan, talked to the other assistant coaches, and just really just like, I think fell in love with the people and then the idea of being an assistant coach and like shifting my mindset a bit of like, okay, I've retired, I'm done playing, like this is going to be the hardest transition of my life, but let me enter into this space and it'll feel not as like hard for me because I'll still be very much around it and in it. So I took the leap of faith, I did it. I had an incredible experience. I knew going into it and the day I left, I still knew I didn't want to coach. That wasn't something for me. But I do think where I added value that year and on the staff was more of just like the player relationship kind of bridge from player to coach. And at that level, you're not really teaching a ton, you're not coaching a ton. It's more just like managing the players and making sure the players are okay. And obviously there's a level of coaching that the head coach does, but the assistants are kind of just there to like make things run smoothly and just like yeah, so I think I added value there. And then, there was just like so much film breakdown that I was like, oh, heck no, I cannot break down film hours and hours and hours a day. Like it was just a lot for me, and that just wasn't something that I wanted to do.
Wait, so is the assistant coach, is that a huge job of a WNBA
Oh yeah.
assistant coach, is film breakdown?
Lots of film breakdown. So I was actually tasked my very first year as an assistant coach with 5 scouts, which is like I haven't heard of any like first year coach that's like tasked with 5 scouts.
What does that
So
mean?
that means that I had 5 teams. So there's 12 teams in
Oh,
the and I had to do the scouting report for 5 of the teams, which means like we have to
oof.
have like the paper scout and then also the film, breaking down the film and cutting up the film and making sure that we're showing all the plays that the other team runs on a consistent basis. And there's like tools for that to help you like break it down, of course, but it was just a lot of like, I mean, I knew the other team's plays like the back of my hand. So it was just like so much preparation. And then,
Wow.
I was a first year assistant coach, so I was nervous presenting scouts at the time because I was like just a player and some of these people are my friends and like you just like want them to respect you in this role, but it's hard to ask that. But I think I figured it out and I had a ton of support from the staff and everyone around me and the players were just absolutely amazing. So it was a really cool experience.
This is so interesting, like just what you had to do. And then, it's sort of like this kind of like you have a skill set as a player, right? Which is like mind blowing to us, like, mortals. And then then you're thrust into coaching. So you're like, okay, well, I was a player, but then you have to stand up in front of people. That
Yeah, it
doesn't
was
mean that
scary.
is not an easy, like that is an acquired skill set. Most people are popping like beta blockers and losing their mind to stand up in front of people. And then you have to get the scouting report and be like, hey, this is what we have to look for. That's that's huge. But then again,
Yeah.
you're like, well, I just overcame 5 ACLs, so
Yeah,
I got
this was a
this.
different type of like pressure. It was very different. But again, like I had that team was perfect for me at that
Yeah.
time. And the staff was really great. So yeah, we got through it.
So you're coaching, you're playing, you're all of this. And I knew from, just my basketball brain that you had a relationship with Allison. She was your agent, right?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
So you got to just tell us how that came together and sort of what your day to day is now.
Yeah. So Allison and I met right when I think right when I graduated from USC. At the time, Allison had one client. She was representing one client. She had just started her business. She was 21 at the time, and I was like, I think I'm like 6 months older than her. So I had been introduced to Allison. She was representing Lisa Leslie. Like
Mind blowing.
really great first client,
21-year-old
right?
old.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, so Lisa Leslie's with you. If you're good enough for her, if she's good enough, wait,
Yeah.
how do I say that? If she if she was good enough for Lisa Leslie, right?
Good
Then
enough for
she's
you. Yeah.
absolutely good enough for
Yeah.
me. I think I said that right.
Yeah. You nailed it.
Anyways, so we met and completely hit it off. She was like just this young, ambitious, passionate agent at the time that was looking to just build out her agency. And now that I know like the story behind how she built it, it is really, really incredible. And like she had a lot of people telling her that she was crazy to be doing what she was doing and getting into women's basketball. There's no money. But I think Allison just had such a drive and a passion for women's basketball. She also played like low level at Brown University. And she was born into a family that was around sports. Her uncle has represented Magic Johnson for the last like 40 years. So she was just embedded in sports and she interned for the Sparks, and that's how she met Lisa and took on Lisa as a client. So I was with Allison as a client for my entire professional career, WNBA and overseas. So obviously we built a very strong connection, an amazing friendship along the way. Fast forward, when I retired in 2021, Allison and I had started having conversations around, oh my gosh, like what would it look like if I worked, with you at Disrupt the Game? And Allison always knew that I had like a very people-oriented skill set and I was just really good with people. And in our industry, that is literally like majority of what it's about. So I think she knew that I'd be a good recruiter, I'd be able to retain clients, I'd be able to have good relationships with brands. So we just kind of toyed with the idea, and then fast forward, like after coaching, I moved to Portland, Oregon, and I worked at Nike in corporate for about 2 years.
You've
And
had like 85 lives and you're so young.
well, yeah, that Nike experience was amazing, and I'm so glad I did it because I feel like not only did I learn a ton, but it was just a great experience for me to get my feet wet a little bit and what it's like to be away from the basketball court. Um, but I knew I wanted more and I wanted to be more in the mix. So Allison and I finally pulled the trigger on the idea and I left Nike and I started working at Disrupt the Game full time. And now her and I have just been leading the charge. And yeah, I think we're 3 years into it, me working, with Disrupt the Game, and it's been a pretty amazing experience.
Is your day to day now with players, is it sort of like all your skill set like coming together? Do you feel like this is it? Like this is the next piece? Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, I think I never for once in the last 10 years thought, okay, I want to be a sports agent. So this is something that just happened because of my relationship with Allison. But I think I've come to the realization and just like, wow, like I could really make a difference in this space. And it's something that I wake up and I'm very grateful that this is my day to day and that this is my job. I get to work with athletes. And even now, with NIL, it's expanded the pool. So now we're working with a lot of college athletes and now even tapping into the high school space. Um, So I think what I'm really good at is the recruiting piece and then the relationship piece. And when you're in a boutique agency, you're hands-on with everything. You're doing everything. It doesn't matter what your role is because you have your hand in everything. So I think, building relationships with brands and bringing clients brand deals has been a lot of fun and rewarding because obviously like money makes people happy. Um, but just like navigating the space for them, like especially these younger college players, helping them pick the right school, making sure they're making the right decisions by staying at that school because, now there's that transfer portal. So year to year, they can decide if they want to move elsewhere. And I think being able to have them at a really young age and building them up and growing their brands on and off the court is really fun for me and something that I take a lot of pride in. And our agency is not transactional. We're not about, just a transaction. I think between Allison and I, we're both very close to our families. So I think we give that family feel with our clients and they know that we truly care about them. There's not a single client that I don't care about, and there's not a single client that we don't want to give everything that we can for them. And that's why we don't have a ton of clients. We represent 15 athletes right now, and Allison and I are pretty hands-on with all of them. Some are lighter lifts than others. Some want more attention than others. Some want to talk to us more than others. But I think we give what we can to everyone, or at least what they want from us. We're not just, uh, you know, signing 20, 40, 50 clients. We're very, very particular with who we bring on and who we want to work with. And I think it's been really good for us so far.
Well, that's great. You just seem like, when I asked you the question, you kind of lit up, which was so awesome. Just knowing also your career and how much you gave to, the sport of basketball on every single level. And, just the injuries and all of it. It just seems like a really cool full circle moment that you can, all your experiences, you can connect with your players and give them
For
all kinds of
sure.
different options. So I'm just thrilled for you and I'm excited for you getting married. I wish we had like another hour. I have like 28 more
I know.
questions, but
Maybe we can do a part two.
we'll do a part two and we'll at least when you come into town for the USC game, I'll get a ticket. We'll have a beer. But
Yes.
thank you
Give me
so much. I
free.
know you're in the middle of free agency and it's crazy, so I totally appreciate you carving out the time.
Oh my gosh, this was awesome. It was a pleasure being on your podcast. Thanks for having me. And I love to see what you're doing and all the guests that you interview. It's been really fun to follow you too from afar.
Jacki Gemelos, everyone. I think my favorite part of our conversation was hearing her talk about playing overseas. So many players have had similar experiences on and off the court, which was really cool to hear. And of course, obviously it has to be the right fit for everybody, for each player. But I think a lot of people don't really know, new fans and old fans, they don't really know how impactful playing overseas can be. And I think Reiner being imprisoned in Russia really changed the narrative, which I totally understand. I mean, that was just the worst thing you could possibly imagine, but it was an anomaly. And for some players, playing overseas was and is the only option, and it's a good one. You're earning money, you're getting competitive play, and a chance to experience other cultures, which is pretty amazing. Anyway, it was just really cool to hear kind of the other side of the story and to hear about her amazing experiences. And of course, overcoming all those ACL injuries. Oh my God, that was so inspiring. And it has motivated me to start running and get back to the gym and just take care of myself because you just don't know, you really just don't know. So it's just one of the joys of doing this podcast. You hear about, just incredible stories and it motivates me and it inspires me. And I hope it does the same for you. All right, that's a wrap on today's episode. As always, please take a second and rate and review the show. I can't tell you how helpful it is. And I also just love hearing from you. Send me an email with your thoughts, suggestions, guests you want to hear from, anything and everything. It's Erin@herlights.com. Thank you, as always, for your support. Fans, friends, family, have the best week of your life.